Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of these little guys right here. These are the Real Steel Knives Rokot. First off, though, in the name of full disclosure, I want to thank, not the manufacturer actually, but the dealer whose exclusive this is, Lamnia, for sending these guys along. They reached out to me, said, hey Nick, we've got a new exclusive with Real Steel of the Rokot here. Are you interested in taking a look at it? And I said to him, as always, absolutely yes, sure, but I'm going to take a look at my disclaimer. I'm going to talk about the good, the great, the bad, the ugly. It might be a gem, might be junk. They still did send along. Nonetheless, we have to assume these are the very best quality controlled ones of these guys ever, and I'm really doing my best not to let that affect the nature and quality of my review. Next thing, let's do some size comparison. These are not tiny knives. Here they are against the, and actually I'm just going to use one of these because they're the same damn knife, right? Here it is against the Spyderco PM2, and so what we see here is in terms of sharpened length, we are way past the PM2. This is not small. Here it is against the Ontario Rat number 2, and here it is against the Spyderco Delica. So we see here again, not a small knife by any particular measure. And then actually here it is against another Real Steel that actually feels in design a little bit similar. That is the Luna. Very different knife in a lot of ways. There's a slip joint, among other things, but it sort of feels like they have a little bit of design DNA in common, right? So there you go. Next thing, this particular knife here is an exclusive to Lamnia. Lamnia is actually a store that I think, well, frankly, they're interesting. They're based out of Finland, I believe, but they're very happy to ship elsewhere in the world, right? With absurdly fast shipping times. It's really weird. They must pay a lot for that. Anyways, I digress. Lamnia is a cool store, and they've got a lot of these interesting exclusives out there, and they've actually offered a discount code in the description for a little while after the video airs. Use it or not, you're not required to. Feel free to just go to this site. But anyways, that is a thing there. But this is an exclusive version of this knife. This knife has been sold elsewhere, but the other versions are generally an N690, not M390, but N690. N is in not a very good steel, right? That's unfair, but I don't care for N690, and with different scale material choices. So this version right here with the carbon fibers and the S35 VN steel, those are an exclusive, and that's an interesting version. So let's go on ahead and talk about the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly. Oh, sorry, N690, shots fired, of this particular knife right here. First off, on the good side, these are actually quite ambidextrous friendly. The reason for that is actually the way that the pocket clip is done. The pocket clip here actually, there is a screw here, but the clip actually slips into the liner area right here. You can see there's a hole on the other side, so you could actually flip this clip around and carry this guy on the left side. And because the thumb studs on both of these are ambidextrous, as is the front flipper tab, which you could also use to open this, as is, frankly, the fuller, which if you've got adamantium fingernails, you could probably open it with too, because that's all ambi, you can have a pretty good experience as a lefty with this guy. So I appreciate that very much. Next thing, you've got a choice of carbon fiber here. The two versions of the carbon fiber are a pretty vanilla carbon fiber on this side here, and then you've got something that they refer to as marbled. It kind of looks a little chippier to me, like a, not chippier, what's the term? Shredded carbon fiber. I don't 100% know, but anyways, you get this one here and then this one here. They call this marbled. They call this just plain carbon fiber. Either way, you get two versions of it. I appreciate that very much. It's nice to see that because, personally, I prefer the regular one, but I can definitely see some folks loving the marble. Next thing, you have a choice of opening methods with this guy. Close this up. There are 3 different ways you can open this knife. Well, actually 4 if you do this, right? But nonetheless, we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But the thumb stud works great, right? Just enough detent for that, no problem at all. You have a front flipper style tab where you press backwards on this guy. Knife comes flying open, which is cool. Then you actually do have a fuller here, which allows you to either pinch the knife open if you'd like, or if you've got a fingernail that's long enough, you could be able to get up inside there and then pop this open using your nail itself, like flick it open. I don't have that skill, but I imagine somebody might. So you've got a choice of opening methods here, which is actually pretty unusual, and all of which result in a pretty svelte carry in the pocket. This guy carries quite well. Brings me to the next point here. It hangs well in the pocket. It kind of comes off to the side here because there's no flipper tab. There's nothing to grab onto here. You got a nice backspacer there. The blade is well far away from everything. This guy carries great in the pocket. Even for being relatively big, it actually carries relatively small, which I appreciate very, very much. Next thing, ergonomics on this are actually really good, right? It's a relatively tall knife, which actually helps very often, but you've got nice ergos here. You've got nice rounded areas on the top of the liners here. This works well in the hand. You get a little tiny bit of hot spotting off the liners at the bottom. But still, the clip works well, everything is positioned well, and it gives you this little area with a little bit of extra jimping here if you want to choke up a little bit for detail work, and I appreciate that very much. This works well in the hands. And the balance, by the way, is just right on. It's right where you would want it to be. I like this in the hand. It's a nice ergonomic design. Speaking of the design, it's a nice design generally speaking. It's a cool looking thing. In a lot of ways, it's got a little bit of a futuristic thing going to it, but it's also got a little bit of a finish like Puko style to it. It's also got, for some reason, as a knife guy, this reads as Slavic, right? If I didn't already know that the designer was Ukrainian, I believe he's Ukrainian, at the very least, Ivan Braginets, it's very Slavic, right? There's something to this that feels a lot like knives from that region. I think that's kind of cool, right? And the design is good in that it's got some nice details to it, too. I mean, to start with, these Morse code things all over it. I didn't bother to decode the whole thing, although actually here, I'm going to bring this right up to the camera and let people take a look at it. Feel free to screenshot, decode, let me know in the comments. And we'll go ahead and I'll give you the other side here. Nice, easy view. But anyways, on the pocket clip here, we have this little bit here is Morse code, and it actually reads Iwan. Right? So the name of the designer. That's a little thing, but it's kind of cool, right? They went there. They did that, and I like that. I appreciate that. The next thing, the backspacer on this is very nice. We have a full backspacer on this. I'm sorry, well, not entirely full, but what feels full these days, right? But nonetheless, that works pretty well. But you can see it's got some little areas here where it's milled off to the side. So you can see these little gaps in there. It's got some texturing back here, which gives you a little bit more grip in the hand, along with the Morse code, which is functional, by the way. And then on the very back here, what we see is there is actually a little hole for a lanyard, where if you take a thin strap there, you can put a lanyard through there and carry this guy, well, on a lanyard, which is cool. I don't do the lanyard thing, and so for me, the very best thing a lanyard hole can be is unobtrusive, but this is a really nice approach to it. That's a good detail. The flipper tab, the front flipper tab, that is, disappears entirely, which is nice and is pretty subtle when it's even there, but it's also very effective. There's more than enough flipper tab there to get this guy open. And then one other thing I like is the polishing of the liners. On both of these guys, the liners are not, super, oh my God, high polished, but they're certainly polished, and it adds a little bit of something to the knife. It's not just like all black or something like that. I think it gives it a little bit of a tuxedo-y look that I appreciate. Not saying this is like a perfect, tuxedo knife for the dinner party. Although, hey, maybe you're going to a weird dinner party. I don't know. But anyways, I appreciate that. And then finally, the price on this guy is actually pretty good. It's $120 for a well-made carbon fiber and S35VN knife with a design that's actually worth a damn. I feel pretty okay about that. I'm digging that. This is a good price. So to me, all of the good here is that it is $120, which certainly isn't cheap, but it's actually pretty good given what you get in here. It's got a nice details, nice design. Pardon me, nice ergos, choice of opening methods, choice of carbon fiber, and it's very ambidextrously friendly. Is that a word? I think it's a word. Whatever. The next thing, on the great side, the blade to me wins, right? This is a great blade, and it's a great blade in a couple of ways. I mean, to start with, it is S35VN. It's also 282, but that's not the steel, right? What's this one? Oh, this is 146. Okay, whatever. Anyways, it's S35VN. And S35VN is a steel that is uncontroversially good to go. It's a really nice knife steel, and it is a massive step forward from the N690 that the normal ones ship in. So that's a great thing to start with. But it's also got a very thin edge. This guy comes to a very, very nice acute edge, which is going to be quite good for, well, damn near anything. And given that you can choke up on it a little bit, this turns out to be a very, very nice cutting tool. And the shape of the blade is good too, because you've got a fair amount of flat to it. You've got a little bit of belly and a tip that actually works pretty well. It's got a relatively thin tip, but there's still a little bit of strength to it. And it's got just the right, I feel like, amount of distal taper to it. I'm a big fan of the blade of this knife. This was a knife that carrying it was like, okay, I have a very good cutting tool with me. Even though the stock's a little thick, they've ground it very well. It works well. So to me, the great part about this knife 100% is the blade. The design is going to sell a lot of these, but the blade is what is great here. On the bad side, I mean, to start with, it's freaking big, right? If we were to measure this guy out, and it's a little tricky to figure out exactly how it would be measured given the liner situation, but I'm probably going to come in right under 3.75 inches, which is, here, I should actually show you the measurement rather than just looking at it. It's going to be over the 3.5 legal line for a lot of folks, and it's big. right? This is a knife that you take this out in the lunchroom and Edna's diving under the table calling HR, right? That's a situation. So you want to keep that in mind, but that's also, whatever, not a big deal. Next thing, the fuller on this guy, no one's really using it, right? I mean, maybe somebody can. If you are able to do this with your fingertip, then you must have more fingernail than I do, or something like that. You Sabretooth from the X-Men with the big old adamantium thing. Maybe you've got that, but for me, that strikes me as a little bit unnecessary, and it's just going to collect crud up in there. Next thing, Flathead Bits on this guy. You can see this is a flathead bit driver, flathead. It works. It's not a proprietary bit. I appreciate that very much, and you saw I was able to get it disassembled without too much trouble, but boy, Torx exists, guys, and I can see it being an artistic choice given all of the Morse code on there and whatever, but I just, functionally speaking, Torx is better. It's not the end of the world, but it's definitely something like, oh, flathead, okay, whatever. Next thing, the detent on these guys is a little bit on the weaker side. It's not weak in the sense of it's dangerous at all, but if you are living in a municipality which may have like a flick test, where can you flick the knife open? This is going to fail at 100%. It has a big, thick blade and a detent that is very much tuned for front flipping. So that is something you're going to want to keep in mind. Like I said, I don't feel like the detent is bad, but it's not a super strong one. So if you're looking for a super strong detent, or you've got a legal challenge like that in your area, keep this one in mind. Next thing, the clip on this guy moves a little bit, unfortunately. It just kind of goes back and forth a little bit. I've got this as tightened down as I can get with the damn flathead bits, but it is still a little bit motile, if you will. It doesn't come out. It's not a danger, but it just feels a little bit jankier. And even on this guy, we get a little bit of that going on there. It's not the end of the world, but it is something you're going to want to keep in mind. Next thing, both of these guys, and I'm actually going to clean off the blade here. Let me grab a microfiber cloth and a little bit of a glasses cleaning solution here, and I'm going to clean the blade off on both of these guys on one side, just so you can see exactly what I'm talking about here. These knives, for whatever reason, and every one of these I've seen pictures of, every one of these on the Lamnia website, the knife blade actually has a little bit of a discoloration to it. It almost has a slight tiny tinge of brownness to it. I have no idea what that is. It doesn't look like a patina. It doesn't feel like a patina or anything like that. There's a little tiny bit of discoloration. And as a result, the blade always looks just the slightest bit dirty. And I don't know what it is. I have absolutely no idea why that's there. But it's something I've seen before, and it's something I'm definitely seeing here. It's not the end of the world, it's certainly, and I'm not dragging them too hard for it, but it's unusual. And the knife ends up looking kind of yellowed and browned in this little area when it really doesn't feel like it needs to for whatever reason. Then finally on the bad side, the disengagement of the lock is not amazing. You can see that they've taken some steps here, right? They've scalloped out this liner, maybe a little tiny bit. It doesn't look like much, like 0.5 millimeter or something, but more importantly, they put in a little bit of a gap here so you can shove your finger in and get that closed, and that's okay. But at the same time, this part right here is very slickery, right? They have still polished this little guy up, and so as a result, your thumb is going to want to slip past there and slip off of this. And so I would have liked to have seen maybe a little bit of scalloping right here, or maybe just drop this liner down just a little bit more. Give me another millimeter or so, maybe 0.5 millimeter, whatever. And that would just make it a lot easier to disengage this guy. Is it hard? No. But it's definitely something where I have failed in this domain before, where I just end up slipping off of it. And that's not the greatest thing ever, right? This is a nitpick. But at the same time, it's definitely something that is the least satisfying part of this knife, according to this particularly picky bastard right here. So to me, all of that is the bad. The disengage process isn't amazing. The blades are a little weirdly discolored. The clip moves around a little bit. The detent is on the weaker side, but it's fine. The flathead screws don't do it for me. The fuller, no one's using that. And then they're a little bit big, but that's the nature of the beast. Nothing ugly here, so let's jump into the final conclusion, which is that this is a really good knife, actually. I was kind of impressed. I kind of took an initial look at it when they sent along, like, okay, sure, I'll give it a shot, okay. Why not? But then I get it in hand and I start looking at the details and it's good, right? Because it's got the lefty friendliness to it. It's got 2 different kinds of CF, 3 opening methods, good ergos, very good ergos. It's got a nice design with good details, a great price, and a great blade. They made a couple of odd choices. The clip moves a little bit. The blade isn't, it's a little weird in coloration. And you know what? The disengagement could be a little bit better, but honestly, my feeling after carrying this a fair amount actually was just like, yeah, this is good. Right? It's a little bigger than I normally go for, but it's good. Design-wise, it's got something going on. Like I said, it's a little bit sci-fi, a little Puko, a little bit Slavic. It's a little bit of something, but it's something, right? It's different. It's not the same old that we so often get from companies like Real Steel. Actually, Real Steel tends to be a little bit more design-focused, right? So I shouldn't drag them there. But nonetheless, it's good. It's also eminently functional. This is just a good knife to have, right? This is a great knife to have around and out with you, right? And all of this comes at a price that, given the steel, given the construction, given the details here, ends up feeling like a relative bargain. And likely all the more so in Europe. I'm looking at the price priced in US dollars, but in euros, I imagine you're probably doing a little bit better because they're the dealership, right? And God knows Europe doesn't get all that many options in terms of pocket knives, right? Things get a little pricey over there, is my understanding. So honestly, with all of those things together, the design, the function, and the price that is actually quite reasonable, it's pretty easy to call this a gem. These are very, very nice knives. And I imagine there are a bunch of folks who are really going to like this. And I think if you like the size, if you like the design, and you like the aesthetic, then I can see this very easily rokoting to the very top of your list, right? I picture you wouldn't have any trouble choosing the Rokot, meaning the knife, and you're rocking it on a daily basis because Rokot is Russian for rocket. Yeah, okay, anyways, I hope this has been interesting to you. Oh, that was bad. And that you have yourselves just an absolutely wonderful, not the knife, the puns, rest of your day. Bye now.